Become a patron at www.patreon.com/Golden Era Bookworm for hard to find books, scans of rare photos, and articles on the golden era of bodybuilding. Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here, and today I'm going to talk about the Silver Era diets used back in the early 1950s for both bulking up and cutting down for competition. I have been asked time and time again to present this kind of information, but unfortunately most people do not understand that bodybuilding nutrition was something that was simply only just developing at that time. You could say that during the Silver Era, it was in its embryonic stages. If you have seen Subs the Movie, a movie by Alex Ardenti, as well as some videos I made in the past on the history of bodybuilding nutrition, you would have learned that pioneers such as Eugene Sandow and Steve Reeves were some of the very few bodybuilders that ever put any emphasis on nutrition. Both Sandow and Reeves used protein drinks, but during the Silver Era, there were no supplements for bodybuilders, and their diets mainly depended on whole natural foods. As a quick reference, scroll through any of my videos on my Your Physique magazine playlist, which features waiter magazines from the mid-40s up to the early 1950s, and I dare you to find a single article on protein or on supplementation for bodybuilders, let alone diets. What I present to you today is the first comprehensive article I have ever read on bodybuilding nutrition from the Silver Era, written by none other than Muscle Beach legend Armand Tanny. Enjoy. Now, Armand Tanny incorporated a raw food diet, which will be the subject of another video. In this article, however, Armand explains the difference in diets for both gaining muscular bulk and for cutting up for competition. This article to me was an awesome find, a real first, and I find it almost uncanny that I had never come across anything on the topic of bodybuilding diets in any muscle magazine prior to 1951. Really, that reflects how little was known about bodybuilding nutrition back then. It is interesting to note that Armand points out that if you as a trainee have been training consistently and hit a plateau and no longer gaining muscle, that this is likely because most trainees, at least back then at the time, were simply following a basic rudimentary American diet, which would be adequate for, as he says, the average Joe. Armand talks about the typical American diet at the time, which consisted of the following food. Just as an example, 6 slices of toast for breakfast, 4 sandwiches for lunch, and spag bowl for dinner. Of course, we know today that this diet is not at all suited for a bodybuilder. Instead, there are several recommendations given in this article, which I will explain after introducing the 2 major Silver Era diets, which were used and recommended for bulking up and also for cutting down. Now here is the diet that was given for obtaining muscular bulk in this article. I've scanned it for you, and as you can see, the diet for obtaining muscular bulk is ideal for hard gainers and novices, those who are underweight and thin and wishing to add muscular bulk and as well as increasing strength. As you can see from the recommended list of foods to eat, the foods include lots of animal proteins, such as different types of meats, milk, cream, cheese, and whole eggs, and we can also see the inclusion of superfoods such as blackstrap molasses and cod liver oil, which were staples of Steve Reeves' diet, which I have mentioned in a previous video on his favorite supplements. Protein shakes with raw eggs are of course included, as back then, again, understand that there were no protein powders. Also included are healthy starches such as rice, pasta, potatoes, whole wheat breads, as well as fruit and vegetables. Essentially, a whole food natural diet is recommended. As I have said many times before, it is not rocket science. How much would you eat? Again, well, this is going to frustrate many people, this question that I'm sure many of you are asking. At the time, the recommendation was that your hunger will determine how much you eat. And basically, it relied on pure instinct. Now, I know it is hard for many of you to understand that back then, nobody calculated macros like today. Nobody did this at all. So please try and get that through your heads. It was all based on feeling. just like the mind-muscle connection. If you can't understand that, then maybe, it's time to take your headset off and listen to your own body and try and start connecting with yourself. Try meditation, I don't know, yoga, whatever. Learn to be with yourself without external distraction, and you will find yourself being able to listen to your body's feedback and concentrate better without being so easily distracted. Because essentially, this is what these guys did back then. There was, no music in the gym. It was just concentration on the task at hand. And when they left the gym, they ate based on what they felt. There were no macro calculators. There was none of that. There was no nutritional advice, no supplementation, no protein powders. They relied on a whole food diet, on a whole food natural diet. Now, here is the definition diet, which, as it states at the top, is a high protein diet. This diet is essentially recommended for losing weight and getting into shape, and for gaining definition for physique contests. The list of foods recommended included both animal and vegetable sources of proteins. Notice the inclusion on the list of recommended foods of both muscle as meat and organ meats as well, such as heart and liver. And these are foods that are definitely not consumed by the average person these days. I mean, not many people will order heart or liver or kidneys for their dinner or for their lunch. So these are the kind of foods that were eaten back then. Once again, wheat germ oil, milk, yogurt, and eggs are included as superfoods, as well as a variety of beans, fruits, and vegetables. The beginnings of protein powders are also visible on this list in the case of soy flour, which was the first protein source other than powdered milk. Of course, this combination of food makes for a high protein and moderate fat diet with little carbohydrates, typical of what was to follow in the recommendations of both Vince Gironda and Rio H. Blair. As can be seen from both instances, Armand of course emphasizes the importance of a high protein diet for the bodybuilder. This, along with plenty of rest and sleep, guarantee muscle growth, which of course we all understand today. He also mentions that many of these silver era bodybuilding stars would at the time follow a diet high in protein, cutting down on fats and carbohydrates to burn subcutaneous fat to bring out muscular definition, as is clear from the definition diet. He points out that races, for example, such as the Eskimo and Polynesian peoples, would follow such diets all the time, which parallels the findings of Vilhjalmur Stefansson, who wrote the book Not by Bread Alone, and of course would influence the nutritional principles of both Rio H. Blair and Vince Gironda, and you will find many of Stefansson's books now on my website, www.goldenerabookworm.com. Interestingly, Armand also classifies proteins as both first class and second class based on their bioavailability, with first class being mainly protein foods of animal origin, such as muscle and glandular meat, dairy products such as cheese, milk, yogurt, and powdered milk, and basically these have the greatest muscle building effect, whilst those of vegetable origin such as soya beans, peanuts, wheat germ, and cottonseed flour were also classified as first class protein. Second class proteins, however, according to Armand, include most vegetable proteins, as these are incomplete sources of protein. Listed were pinto beans, navy beans, lima beans, kidney beans, lentils, and dry peas. Now, there is a recommendation at least on the amount of protein that Armand states that is optimal for bodybuilders, and that has to be his recommendation of at least consuming 100 grams of protein daily for the average bodybuilder during the silver era, which equates to either at least 1 pound or 500 grams of beef, or the more affordable option of 2 cups of soybeans, which may or may not be optimal to some. Armand does state that most of one's protein intake should be sourced from animal protein and the rest from vegetable sources. How much protein, you may ask, was recommended specifically for each and everybody? I mean, he just said 100 grams at least, so it's not exactly a specific amount. Well, Armand again states that your natural appetite should dictate your daily protein intake, which can fluctuate, which I have to admit has some inner wisdom inherent in that statement. but will no doubt once again frustrate many viewers nowadays. Understand, many people have asked me to share the diets and nutritional principles of bodybuilders from the silver era, so I'm just delivering here. And I have to admit that although some of the information here still applies, some of course is outdated. I also have to admit that many may find the diets that are given very, very vague. Once again, understand that back then, nobody, and I mean nobody, calculated macros whatsoever. Most simply gauged their food intake by hunger and depended more on instinct than on calculators. Interestingly though, other supplements such as vitamins and minerals are also recommended by Armand, as even back then people were starting to realize that foods being mass-produced were becoming devitalized and less nutritious. What of course is not recommended is, to eat pies, pastries, cakes, white flour, and refined sugar, which of course still applies today. Now, if you're interested in learning more about the nutritional advice given back then in the silver era, I'd highly recommend getting onto my website, where I now have uploaded some of Vilhelm Stephenson's books, as well as Gaylord House's books. Now, these books were really the preliminary books that led to the principles of bodybuilding nutrition that were later adopted by Rio H. Blair and Vince Gironda. Now, you're going to find some of Vilhelm Stephenson's books on my website, as well as Gaylord House's, and these are the kind of books that, for example, Steve Reeves, Armand Tanny would be reading at the time. So you're going to get direct information from the silver era as silver era bodybuilders used to read them. Basically, I've tried to build up a small library of the books that existed on nutrition back then for you guys to enjoy. Now, for those interested as well, of course, I'm selling Rio H. Blair's books as well as Vince Gironda's, all as ebooks on my website, www.goldenerabookworm.com. Now, the books I've got available on my website from Stephenson include The Fat of the Land, which was one of the best books he ever wrote. It was actually the expanded edition of Not by Bread Alone, and this was basically one of Vince Gironda's core books, you could say. And it shaped basically the golden era, both the silver and golden era nutrition following the publishing of this book. The other books I've got are My Life with the Eskimo and Hunters of the Great North, which explore the adventures and the nutrition that, the nutrition that he learned, that Stephenson learned while traveling in the Arctic areas of the world, where basically they have such a high protein, high fat diet. So basically that's what's so great about these books. You really learn how peoples of the North ate and survived on high protein, high fat diets. These are the books that basically laid out the principles later on ketogenic diets and in bodybuilding nutrition in general. So these books are now available on my website, www.goldenerabookworm.com. So I do hope you have enjoyed this look at the silver era diets for both bulking up and cutting up. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and share the video as well if you enjoyed it. And please subscribe if you haven't done so yet. And to support the channel, become a patron, visit my website for out-of-print books and courses on old school bodybuilding. And you can also donate via PayPal if you wish, or to my campaign to create a museum exhibition on the golden era of bodybuilding. Please also email with any questions or to get in touch. So once again, I hope you have enjoyed the video. This is the Golden Era Bookworm saying bye for now. To take full advantage of my collaboration with Old School Labs, please visit their website and choose from their marvelous range of supplements using my code BOOKWORM12. And for an entertaining look at the history of bodybuilding's supplement industry, I would highly recommend watching Subs the Movie, which I have collaborated in, available at Amazon Prime and Vimeo.